Hello all, and welcome to this Friday afternoon's beer review. It's a little bit later than I usually do my afternoon beer reviews. That's because I was doing my chores. I wasn't being lazy. And I really went and got done and scrubbed the entire bathroom. Well, except for the parts of the shower curtain that would cause it to break if I went and scrubbed it hard. But you know what I'm getting at here. So what are we reviewing today? Well, we're reviewing probably the lightest ABV beer that I have ever reviewed. That's of course not a non-alcoholic beer or a non-alcoholic beverage, and this is Lindemans Framboise. This is a Lambic Crake. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. From Belgium, and this is a gift from my aunt. So let's read the back, shall we? Lindemans Framboise, lambic made from local barley, unmalted wheat, raspberry juice, aged hops, and wild airborne yeast. Spontaneous fermentation. True lambics are rare. All come from one of the fewer than a dozen breweries in Belgium's Seine River Valley, a region of about 15 by 75 miles in size. Lindemans Brewery, family owned since 1822. Now, interestingly, there is no ABV statement printed anywhere on this bottle. So I went and looked it up, and it gave a range of about 2.5 to 4, which makes sense, given that it's a spontaneous wild yeast. Fermentation, you're not able to control the ABV as well as you would with a sort of domestic yeast um, in much more controlled industrial beer produced settings. So yeah, it's probably a little 2.5 or a little over. They give that range there just in case. But either way, 2.5 seems to be the most published ABV. Looking into it, there's that range there. But yeah, so this is from Belgium, obviously. And let's get to this. Okay, and apparently this is corked. I was not expecting that. This is a blind one, so luckily I have a corkscrew. I was not expecting a cork, guys. Now, I am not very good at removing it is really in there. Okay. Let's see here. This is going to be a comedy, I know it. There we go. I had to adjust my wrist a little bit there. Okay, so let's go and pour this out. This is the cork that was giving me so much trouble there. So, into the Belgian tulip. And leaving the dregs there because we don't want that yeast. And an almost opaque wine red, wine purple color. Looks more like wine. With a lavender head. It's got quite some staying power for something that's only 2.5. So a thick frothy lavender head. That is redolent of raspberries. Minerality, funk, almost like a chalkboard-like smell. Chalkboard and raspberries. This is an interesting one. So funk, chalkboard, raspberries. Very much real raspberries. It smells like puree rather than like raspberry flavoring. Let's go on to the palate, shall we? Hmm, tart. Sweet and tart. Very refreshing. So it is very acidic, but at the same time, it has a lot of residual sugars in it. Maybe not so much residual sugars, but almost like juice-like notes. It really tastes like the raspberry juice is in there. And so it's actually really well balanced. Um, you can tell from the reaction, the feeling on your tongue, the acidity level, the pH level is very high. Well, for a beer, that is. It's not like sulfuric acid high. My mouth's not burning or anything. But it is high for a sour. But there is quite a bit of sugar, fruit sugar, malt sugars left in there that creates a almost balancing sweet note. If this was not so tart, it would be cloyingly sweet. But because it is so acidic, so tart, it is not cloying. Raspberries are strongest in the mids and even into the finish. Just big raspberries on the palate. Just lingering there. Almost like I'm drinking raspberry juice in some respects. Carbonation bite is strong, melds well with the acidity. There's also lingering acidity in the long finish on the back of your tongue. To be honest, now that I think of it, and it's been now, it actually reminds me a little bit of communion wine taste. For those of you who are Catholic, the funk is in the front and in the mids, underneath the sweetness and the tartness, and that's what reminds you that this is technically, well, it's not technically, it's actuality, full-on a beer. As opposed to like fermented juice, say like I don't know what you would call fermented raspberry juice, not cassis, but if you know, you can go and tell me. But that funk edge to it, there, underneath the sweetness and acidity, is what lets you know that this is a wild ale. That said, it's not a challenging funk at all. Now, there's not much great complexity to the taste notes here. You got your raspberry, you got that wild funk, and you got that sort of tart sourness. But all in all, it's very refreshing, very interesting. It's a style everyone should try at least once. And honestly, this might be a good introduction to the world of sours, being that it has all that residual sugar to balance off the acidity, as well as to kind of, I'm not going to say mask, but sand off the more challenging rough edges of the funky wild yeast. Funky wild yeast, yes. As it warms up, more of that funk is making itself known, but it's still not very overpowering. It's still a third fiddle to the sweetness and the tartness, and actually fourth. The raspberry is still pretty strong in there too. It's nice drinking something this light, you know. You feel alcohol, but you don't really feel alcohol, you know. It's like, oh, my mood is slightly elevated, but I don't have a buzz. It's like you're just feeling elevated. Yes, definitely as it warms up, that funk note is expanding. All in all, very enjoyable and surprisingly affordable too. I believe this bottle was about $6 thereabouts, which is quite good for a lambic, which are notoriously, you know, Belgian lambics are notoriously expensive, which is why this is probably like I think I've reviewed a couple, but I haven't reviewed one for like a few years. It goes to show you how long I've been doing this. I can't remember the last time I've reviewed it, only that I've reviewed it before. And yeah, it's one that you'll find on shelves with most of the other Belgian imports, and it's definitely worth a shot, I'd say. So, Lindemans Framboise. Refreshing, low ABV, but definitely not light when it comes to taste and when it comes to mouthfeel. That is your beer review for this afternoon. Cheers.